Greetings, wayward souls. It's the Game Pack Preacher, and today I have a question to pose to you. Would you rather have 15 minutes in the spotlight to be adored by onlookers near and far, only for it and yourself to fade away from the minds of the people? Or would you prefer to stay in the dark, to never know the limelight and have your deeds remain unknown but unscrutinized? I want you to keep this question in your thoughts, as it will be the focal point of our subject today with Rare's sci-fi thriller FPS gem, Perfect Dark. Perfect Dark is a great game with a not-so-great story behind it. If anything, that could describe a lot of Rare's titles. But unlike those other games, I feel like the story of this franchise just gets messier with each new installment. But I wanted to take a look at the adventures of Miss Dark and see if I can find an answer to my own question, both in memoriam of the good that we had got, and in memoriam to that what we will never get. So strap on your skin-tight suits and load up your laptop guns. Today we see if this franchise had shone brighter than it could have, or if it was always doomed to the shadows. So as was mentioned before, Perfect Dark is an FPS game for the
Nintendo Ultra 64.
Released rather late in the console's lifespan in 2000, it is by all accounts a spiritual successor to Rare's other hit FPS game for the console, GoldenEye. Despite this, and despite literally running on an upgraded version of GoldenEye's engine, it often gets overlooked by its younger cousin. Then again, you could argue that every shooter on the console gets overlooked by GoldenEye. You could say it's something they all bond over.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Anyway, the game follows the adventures of Miss Joanna Dark as she embarks on mission after mission in service of the Carrington Institute. In the far-off future of 2023, she'll find herself in a world of flying cars, megacorporations attempting to overthrow the government, and even an alien menace that threatens the planet itself. Why did only one of those things end up happening for us? It's not even either of the cool ones. State of the world aside, it is a lot more interesting series of events than those in GoldenEye, and honestly, I'm of the opinion that Perfect Dark is a better game than GoldenEye. For several reasons, really. First off, the protagonist. Maybe it's just because I have the curse of straight man, but I do prefer Joanna over Mr. Bond. Cause I mean, come on now, like, whew. But even outside of their looks, and don't get me wrong, the polygonal approximation of Pierce Brosnan is handsome as far as the 90s go, but Joanna just actually has this thing called a personality? Sure, she's a secret agent, but she actually feels emotion, she quips here and there, she gets annoyed, flustered, shows off some of that British wit. She just overall feels a lot more human, and that makes a big difference. Outside of our protagonists, I also prefer the sci-fi setting of the not-so-distant future compared to the Cold War-era espionage thing. Give me cyborgs over Soviets any day, but I mean aesthetics only go so far. You are mainly playing a shooter to shoot things, not ogle at pixels, and I mean Perfect Dark kinda takes the gold when it comes to the shooting as well. It plays much like its predecessor does, but slicker and better. Not only that, but the enemy AI is more advanced as well. Enemies will group up, move around, hell, you can even disarm them and they'll react accordingly. All very impressive stuff for the time. However, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a smoother experience than GoldenEye. When it comes to original hardware, there really is no sugarcoating it. Perfect Dark chugs, and it chugs hard. A lot of games were putting the N64 through its paces during the later part of its lifespan, and Perfect Dark is sadly no exception. Even with the power of the expansion pack, it still struggled, and it's one of the few games that actually requires it too. Right up there with Majora's Mask and...
Oh, banana!
Not only that, it is still a shooter on the N64. Back in the day, that wouldn't be an issue, but I mean in modern times, yeah, I can't kid myself that this thing was good to use for an FPS, and something else that doesn't feel good nowadays is how cryptic the game is. Much like GoldenEye before it, Perfect Dark basically tosses you into a mission, gives you a list of objectives, the tools you need, and goes, good luck, scamp. You are told nothing. You don't know where these objectives are, what they look like, or what you need to do with them. It basically feels like it comes down to trial and error. Not only that, if you should happen to fail one of your objectives, the whole mission goes up in smoke and you have to start over. And that's just on the normal difficulty. The greater difficulties give you more objectives, which means more chances to fail and fewer resources to boot. I feel like there's a whole conversation that can be had about this really, but to me, in the modern day at least, it's not really all it's cracked up to be. Oh yeah, and being one of the later games on the console didn't do it any favors. doesn't help that a certain other console was making the rounds in the land of the rising sun either. But Perfect Dark managed to make a name for itself despite everything working against it, and it's still a good game despite my gripes with it. It is a worthy follow-up to what was considered, at the time, one of the greatest FPS games to ever be made. Unfortunately, the good times couldn't last, and Joanna was going to find herself in a new spot of trouble. And funnily enough, it all began with a big helping of corporate bullshit. September 24th, 2002, a day that will live in infamy for any Rareware aficionado. The company was acquired by Microsoft in what some would consider the most tragic acquisition of a studio even to this day. There are no doubt a ton of think pieces on this acquisition already out there. I'm sure they all range from saying the magic died, or that it could have been worse, it's not as bad as you think, and every other opinion in between. We aren't here to talk about that, but as a quick aside, I definitely feel like the Rare acquisition wasn't all doom and gloom. I mean, yeah, things are bleak, especially watching Xbox as a whole crumble before our eyes, but if we're strictly talking about their game output post-buyout, there are some gems to be found. Cameo is alright. I actually enjoy Viva Pinata, shockingly, and even I can't bring myself to dislike Nuts and Bolts, at least not anymore. With all these diamonds in the rough to be found, Perfect Dark Zero is not one of them. In fact, I'd go as far to say Perfect Dark Zero is a whole 10-pack of premium ass. Drop that bass. Listen, no studio has a perfect track record. I get that. Sometimes things just don't work out. It's honestly a miracle if any game ends up making it to market. And it's a great thing when people can see their blood, sweat, and tears materialize. And I've also played some bad games over my years. However, I've played very few games that make me see the way Perfect Dark Zero does. And this isn't like blind hatred I'm talking about either. Nah, this is no Nintendo fan level of hate. No, this hatred is boiled, fermented, and seasoned through years of growth, wrinkles gained in my brain, and a recent playthrough for spice. I haven't played through all of Rare's library, at least not at this moment, but of the games of theirs that I have played, Perfect Dark Zero is easily the worst. Full stop. And if you like this game, more power to you, but this is gonna be a relentless beating. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We need context. Perfect Dark Zero is actually a prequel to the original Perfect Dark. It released as a launch title for the Xbox 360 in 2005. Like many a game before the buyout, it originally began development for the GameCube. And with a heavier focus on the multiplayer post-buyout, the team's ambition ended up pushing the OG Xbox too far as well. Heck, the team had to scrap a bunch of ideas even when it moved to the 360. The game takes place 3 years before the events of Perfect Dark, and follows a younger, sassier Joanna Dark. We get to see her journey into how she gets involved with Datadyne, the Carrington Institute, and how she becomes the secret agent worthy of the game's title. Alright, context over. Now for the fun stuff. So why do I despise this game? Oh boy, let me count the ways. First off, the designs. And I do have to specify when I say designs, I don't really mean the art style in general. In all honesty, PD0 is a very pretty game for 2005. When I say the designs, I really mean towards the characters. Like, let's take a look at our protagonist, Miss Joanna Dark herself. You know, the secret agent. Does this look like a secret agent to you? And before you hit me with the, well, actually she isn't an agent yet, she's just a mercenary for most of this game. This doesn't look like a mercenary either, and by the time she does look the part, the game is just about over. Her father looks like a mercenary. If anything, he looks too much like one. He looks like he belongs in a Call of Duty game, if anything. How about Daniel Carrington, the esteemed owner of the Carrington Institute? This is him in the original game, and this is him in Zero. Can you tell what nationality he is? And these are just our protagonists. Every character of importance in this game looks like they belong in a completely different game or franchise entirely. Hell, the main bad guy looks like he belongs in a Bond movie. Which is further amplified by the fact that his daughter is named like a woman from a Bond movie. And the issues with the designs kinda lead into my next issue with the game, the vibes. But what exactly do I mean by that? Perfect Dark knows what it is and sticks with it. It's a sci-fi espionage thriller type beat. From the scenery, to the music, to the plot, and especially its style. Everything works in tandem to sell you on that vibe. You never once question it because it sells you on that vision. Perfect Dark Zero's vibes are all over the damn place. You end up in all these different clashing locales. We already talked about the characters, and the music. Geez, the music. It's not bad per se, but like you have a track like this, and then it swaps to a track like this. And then even the missions are just as tonally weird as well. Like, for example, there's a mission in the game, right? You have to break into the compound on top of a snowy mountain. You trick the guards, then take them out, bluff your way into the compound, dodge security beams and cameras, you know, all that cool spy stuff. Then, once you're in the compound, you end up fighting the evil Bond villain's daughter in a 1v1 Halo deathmatch. I seriously wish I was making this up. And then in another mission, right after Joanna's father died, mind you, it literally starts with these cowboy bounty hunters cornering you. You have never met these two, they have never been established before, and they are never brought up again after you dispose of them. It is extremely unfitting, and just kinda adds to the overall feeling of tonal whiplash. But none of that even matters because Perfect Dark Zero's biggest problem is that it is easily one of the worst first-person shooters that I have ever played. Yeah, it was a launch title, but that doesn't excuse just how piss poor it still performs. Halo 2 is a better FPS than Zero is, coming out a year prior. Doom 3 is a better FPS than Zero despite an overall different vibe and an ass shotgun. The original Call of Duty is a better FPS than Zero. Hell, the original Perfect Dark is a better FPS than Zero. Back in the year of frickin' 2000, 2 whole goddamn console generations passed, and for what? I have never played a shooter this stiff, this clunky, and this much of an overall slog to play. Precision isn't going to be something you have in Zero, and it doesn't matter what you do to your sensitivity or controls, because you'll either swing so fast you'll give yourself vertigo, or move like you're trying to swing a sledgehammer. You have a cover system that's actually more of a hindrance to you if anything, because you'll either most likely be aiming in the completely wrong direction, or sometime Joanna's big head will block your sightline. Stealth is a suggestion at the best of times, and a complete non-factor most other times, because despite the enemy AI having the survival skills of a dodo, they can hear a freaking silenced gunshot from 50 yards away. Somehow. And oh yeah, the enemy AI is dumb as hell. That's doubly funny considering the OG PD was praised for its enemies that actually, you know, take cover, dodge things, and act like enemy assailants would. It's also doubly infuriating because this lack of intelligence also applies to any allies you may find yourself chained to as well. Allies that will most likely cause you to fail the mission if, or more accurately, when they bite the bullet. The first time I attempted to beat Perfect Dark Zero, I actually ended up quitting during one such instance, in an escort mission no less. Little did I know that this was mission 3 out of 14, and if you're curious, yes, it does keep getting worse. It's just, look, there have been plenty of bad sequels to good games, but I don't think I've played one that spits in the face of its predecessor as violently as Perfect Dark Zero. I would sooner play the original game on original hardware at like 12 FPS than ever have to slug it through Zero again. People do say that the multiplayer was good, but buddy, I don't think you were buying Perfect Dark Zero to boot it up with the boys. You'd be better off getting an original Xbox and playing, well, Halo 2. It's all just infuriating. In a legacy as accomplished as Rare's is, Perfect Dark Zero is a big black stain on it, and I stand by that statement that it is one of, if not their worst games. And maybe I'm being harsh with it, after all, many of Rare's games do have lengthy tales behind them, but the finished product that we got is just not good. I will include a more objective look at this game in the description, but I stand by my assault of it, and it wouldn't be for quite some time before anyone even contemplated correcting it. So you would think our story would lead us towards the now defunct reboot of Perfect Dark. Well, it will, in time, but we actually have a few things to discuss before that. Because as it turns out, there were some attempts before the reboot to actually patch things up in the Perfect Dark universe. The first we'll be discussing will be the reading material. Yeah, Perfect Dark Zero actually has some books attached to it. There's a whole freaking comic for it that takes place after the events of Zero, and it's actually quite good. If anything, I was more enthralled with the comics a couple chapters in than I was at any point playing through the game itself. The comic paints a much better picture of the cyberpunk hellscape the year of 2020 is depicted in this universe. And it actually portrays Joanna as the agent who would become worthy of the title Perfect Dark. not to mention the artwork is just slick as hell. I honestly didn't think I'd gain a lot from reading this. I'm not exactly a fan of seeking out supplementary material for video games, cause, why can't the game just convey any of that? But I'm very glad that I did. The comic is called Janice's Tears if you want to look into it yourself, and I highly recommend you do if you care about this franchise. There are also a couple of novels based on Zero as well, but sadly, I do not have the time nor the funds to pursue these. If any of you watching have read these novels, please let me know how they are in the comments below. If they're as well written as the comic is, all the better. The second attempt to flesh out this franchise actually came in the shape of a sequel. Well, another sequel with Perfect Dark Core. After Perfect Dark Zero, a prototype for a new sequel in the Perfect Dark universe was being worked on. This go around was going to be grittier, badder, one might even say edgier. But if this is your first time hearing about it, well, because it didn't come to pass. The story goes that in 2007, the directors of the project had presented it to the Xbox board for funding, and then it got shot down. But why? This is Rare we're talking about, the studio that you spent $375 million to acquire. How could you just pass on funding something from a studio that talented? It's not like you already have a sci-fi FPS franchise that's currently bankrolling your... Oh... Well, maybe they could have made it into a third person. Oh. So, yeah, Xbox wasn't too keen on pursuing another sci-fi shooter at the time. I mean, it was 2007, Halo 3 dropped that year, and Gears 1 was already out. Heck, I'm a Rare fanboy, and even I probably would have picked Halo 3 over Perfect Dark Core. With Halo and Gears in their prime, there just wasn't room for Perfect Dark in the lineup.
Pause for effect.
Fast forward to 2020, Halo and Gears are both shadows of their former selves, and Xbox decided, you know what, maybe now is a good time to add another sci-fi shooter into the mix. It's not like that market is even more crowded, plus it's not like they were putting out anything better. So at the Game Awards of that year, we got a trailer for a reboot of Perfect Dark, and it was not going to be developed by Rare. Instead, it was going to be developed by a relatively green company under the Xbox banner known as The Initiative. So you're bringing back a popular Rare franchise when all they've been doing is Sea of Thieves, but you're not having them work on it, nor are you bringing in people who had worked on the franchise previously. That certainly is a choice. But honestly, even at the time, I was okay with this. Perfect Dark had been dormant for over a decade, and considering the last game we got out of this franchise was Zero, just about anything would be better than that in my opinion. I stand by the opinion that the team would have had to purposely try to make a game worse than Zero, but unfortunately, we will never know if that opinion will be justified because much like Core before it, the reboot also got canned. I'm sure there are articles and essays getting into the specifics of things, but even as a spectator the picture was looking bleak. The Initiative was basically a revolving door as far as keeping talent. From the very bottom to even leads on the project, people were bailing left and right. A year into the project, they announced that they would be partnering with Crystal Dynamics, the creators of the hit franchise Gex. And some Tomb Raider games, I guess. Unfortunately, talent still bled from the company as the years went by, which caused development to get more and more stifled, and apparently I guess wanting an engine change from Unreal 4 to 5 didn't help either. This all came to a fever pitch in July of 2025, where the game was finally put out of its misery and relegated back to the dustbin, and even though it wasn't a Rare project, it died alongside one with the cancellation of Everwild not too far behind it. There was a last-ditch effort to try and revive the project between Microsoft and Take-Two, but that ultimately fell through the cracks because they couldn't agree on who would own the property rights. How ironic, for a franchise involving corporate espionage to be put down due to corporate bullshit. So here we are in the present. Microsoft continues to shit the bed and the adventures of Joanna Dark have once again been banished to the shadows. And that's a damn shame that is, because I do think that a new Perfect Dark can work in this landscape. If anything, I think it would be even more fitting in our current day and age. 2023 may be history, and even though the aliens haven't come for us yet, the whole corporate-dominated hellscape is looking less like fiction with each passing day. Plus, the whole cyberpunk vibe I still feel is prime real estate considering the only AAA game to really take advantage of it has been, well, cyberpunk. I feel like there's still a place for Miss Dark in our modern age, and as sacrilegious as it sounds, I don't even think Rare have to be the ones to bring her back. Would it be cool if some of the minds who worked on the franchise previously worked on a new game? Absolutely, but bringing in new blood isn't always a bad thing. Some new ideas and talent could have been the shot in the arm the franchise needed, and I truly believe whatever we would have got would have been decent, or at least better than the last thing we got. There is still mileage for this franchise. There's stories to be told around a future where your cell phone can play your music and establish encrypted satellite communication. A world where hypercorporations dominate the media, have their own private armies, can buy out entire countries, and somehow get involved in alien blood feuds. A world where a beautiful but deeply scarred woman practically stands alone against the ever-looming dark while still managing to maintain her humanity and crack some of that British wit. But I guess we'll never know, because this industry continues to spiral into a free fall with no foreseeable end in sight. And her franchise doesn't go out with a bang, but a whimper. It seems to happen a lot with Rare franchises. Some may say the dark better suits a secret agent, which isn't exactly wrong, but I hope one day that Joanna can step into the light again, because you can't have darkness without some light in the mix as well. Thank you guys for watching, and more to come as always. This is GamePack Preacher. Over and out.